All right. So I just got off a call with one of my private clients who has an online education business and he's doing about 150K a month. He's like, I know I have a lot more in the tank and I'm just not accessing it. And he's like, I'll be really gung-ho about something. I'll do something really, really well. And then I'll just kind of fall off. And he reached out to me yesterday and he's like, yo, can we meet tomorrow? I'm falling off again. He said, I'm having a really tough time just kind of feeling like I'm being too hard on myself again. And so for context, he's an ex-professional athlete, and so he's hyper competitive. He has a lot of drive. He has very high ambitions. And so coming into this call, he was really, I'll just say anxious for lack of a better term. And so within 15 minutes, we pretty much eliminated all of that. And there was a few perspective shifts that I shared with him that we kind of talked through that I figured might be also helpful for you. And if you want to hear the full methodology behind how we do what we do, you can grab a copy of the 7-Figure Mind Method book. The foreword is by Dan Henry. It's a really good read, walks through our entire process and philosophy on effectively how we help business owners, specifically online business owners, get the most out of themselves and rewire their mind, as it says here, to eliminate stress and unlock 7-figure profit in your online business. So if that sounds cool, grab it in the description. And if you want to find out more about what it's like to work with us, find me on Instagram, probably going to be a link in the description here, and just DM me the word bulletproof. I have a short little automation that'll send you all the details. So here's 5 points that we covered on that call that I thought also might be helpful for you. So number 1 is stop fighting whatever the problem is, because that which you resist persists. That which you fear, you bring to you. So my client was resisting this anxious feeling, this feeling of what's going to happen next month. I got to make sure everything's in order. What's going to happen to our revenue? What's going to happen here? What's going to happen over there? We got these things happening with clients, blah, 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 blah. And in his mind, this perceived chaos was a problem. The thing is, problems are only problems if we want circumstances to be different than they are. And so as high achievers, we're always wanting the higher level, meaning we're always wanting circumstances to be different from what they are. And so that's fine as long as they don't run you, as long as you're not effect to them, as long as you're cause over them. And so how do you become cause over a problem? Well, if you do what is happening reactively, causatively, it will cease to have the biting, anxious feeling on you. So for example, he was sharing with me that a couple days ago, in his terms, he had a quote unquote panic attack. Now, I'm not a big label guy. I don't put labels on conditions. I asked him what he meant by this, and he just said, well, I had anxious thoughts and was kind of like had, tightness in my chest and in my jaw as I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I'm just a practical guy who has learned some frameworks that help make stress in the mind go away, or at least severely reduce itself. And so I'm like, well, the only reason a quote panic attack is a problem is because you think it shouldn't be happening. You think the business or your circumstances should be different than they currently are, right? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, as Buddha said, desire is the root of all suffering. So the fact that we think we shouldn't have these particular feelings is what causes the problem itself. Because if we just allow it to run its course, like, yeah, panic attack, yeah, that's cool, bring it on. Not trying to avoid it. Yeah, cool, panic attack, it's happening. In fact, I said, if you really want to make it go away quicker, intensify it. Really dramatize that panic attack. And so on this call, I'm like, let's do it right now. I had him like do really heavy breathing and recite what he was saying out loud and really intensify it and over dramatize and like, ah! I had him do that. And so he started laughing. And I'm like, no, come on, stop. You didn't laugh during this panic attack. Why are you laughing? He's like, well, it's ridiculous. I'm like, exactly. So if you dramatize this panic attack causatively, it will cease to have an effect on you because now you're cause over it rather than going, oh no, please, please don't happen to me. So the more that you resist something, the more that thing persists. And this works the same way with like pain too as well. For example, if you have a headache or something is hurting you, just focus your attention on trying to make it hurt worse. and it will actually start to dissipate. At the very least, you'll have a causative relationship with it rather than being a victim or effect to it. Which brings us to point 2. The physical universe and the mind work on what's called a reverse vector system, meaning if I want something, it moves away from me. If I don't want something, it moves towards me. So I said to my client, I said, have you ever been in a situation where you really wanted something and it didn't happen? He's like, well, yeah, of course, I really wanted to not feel as anxious as I was feeling the other day. I'm like, cool. Any other situations like that? He's like, yeah, back when I was starting my business or trying to get a team member to do a thing or trying to get my ads to work or trying to close a client, the harder I tried, the more the results seemed to be elusive to me. I'm like, okay. And have you ever been in a situation where the opposite was the case, where you didn't want something to happen, yet it came to you, or you didn't need something to happen and it came to you? He's like, yeah, in fact, we just did a webinar over the weekend and we filled all of our spots, and my assistant told me that we actually sold 5 more spots than we had allotted for. And he's like, damn, I didn't mean for that to happen. Good problem to have, right? And so when you don't need something or you don't want something, that's when it comes to you. And so you can start using this to your advantage. When you find yourself wanting something really bad, if you're trying to get yourself into action, you're trying to get yourself to do something, and you're like, oh man, darn it, I keep procrastinating on a thing. Go deliberately procrastinate. Deliberately take a lot of time off. And as soon as I say that, you're like, well, I can't do that. Exactly. That's exactly correct. So the more that you try to force yourself to not do something, the more likely you are to actually do it. And then from there, it's not about getting rid of the want or not want. It's about being causative over this reverse vector system that we live in. And it's understanding when to use each of these as a tool. So I said, next time you're feeling like you should be doing something or things should be different, look at it on the exact flip side of it. So if you're thinking you should be having more energy or more focus, it's like, try to be unfocused, try to be lethargic. And most likely your mind will go, fuck that, and will actually get you into action. It is a tool that I found to be very effective, and just in those little demonstrations that I just did with my client, he found it to be very effective too, because it's not about deciding that you don't want a goal anymore. It's about not having that be cause over you. It's about being causative over the goal, over the intention. As I've said in some of my other videos, and I go in depth in this book about, on page 127 here, it says, I'm sure if you're reading this, you really want to get to the next level in your business badly, but you're still stuck. Remember, the more you want something, the more it moves away from you. Here's why wanting is a trap. If you want something, by definition, you don't have it or you lack it. So want equals lack. And you can see there's a graphic right here that illustrates this point. And this brilliant author goes on to say, if you're putting out want or lack of having it, you'll get back lack of having it or wanting it. The reason you aren't making 7-figure profits, for example, is because you want it too much. You're too emotionally attached to it. And so it says here, there are 2 ways to get a result in your life and business. Reactively, wanting, which is driven by the mind, or consciously, with intent, which is driven by you. And I make the differentiator of you being the conscious being that is driving this physical body through this physical universe, and you have this mind that has these positive and negatively charged particles in it that make up these mental image pictures that effectively make up your physical reality. It's kind of like seeing the fabric of the matrix. So you can either be effect to the matrix, so to speak, or you can be the coder coding and modifying the matrix. And so when we talk about conscious intention, how do I know if somebody has an intention or a want? Well, many people want to make 7 figures. Many people want to do 100K a month in their business. Very few people, in fact, have done the math and reverse engineered, well, based on my ideal lifestyle that I've deliberately priced out on how much it's going to cost me every single month to live my ideal lifestyle, and priced in enough to put away so that I can have my investment accounts grow so that they'll eventually pay for my ideal lifestyle even if my business shits the bed. That's what we call our freedom number. If I've done the math on that and I know what my client lifetime value is, then I know how many clients I need every single month. If I know my close rate, I know how many booked calls, if you run a call model, I need every single single month, how many leads I need, and if you run ads, how much ad spend I need. That's all calculatable. And then as long as you do each month, each week, each day, as long as you do those required actions and you track your key performance indicators, your KPIs, you can track your progress towards that particular goal. That person has an intention to hit 7 figures, or at least to hit whatever their goal is. The person who wants it just scrambles around doing scattershot activities and trying all sorts of different business models and launching different offers with no real rhyme or reason, joining all sorts of different programs and solving the problems that aren't the actual real problems that need to be solved, which is why they stay where they are. And it's why we do what we do. So I explained to my client, I'm like, you're wanting to not have these experiences. How about let's intend for the alternative and move from effect to these experiences to cause over these experiences. And so I gave him a couple practical things to do that I just shared with you. Next point, and this one is very, very common, including myself. I reminded my client that data beats feelings every single time, or at the very least, we need the data to validate or invalidate our feelings or gut hunches. And I reminded him, you know, a lot of the time I feel like a broke piece of shit too, but that's why I track my finances and I go and I look in my Monarch account, which is what I have set up for myself and what we have our clients set up so they can track their business and personal finances. I said, I go and look in there when I'm feeling like things aren't going very well, or I'm feeling, you know, broken like a piece of shit. I go and look at the data. Does the data validate that I am broke and homeless, or is that just a feeling? That ends up being just a feeling. Now, it may show us that we are broke and homeless and fucked, in which case that's good news. Our data and our feelings match. That's fantastic news. Now we just have to take different actions to make those data points go up. I said, but just because you feel a certain way, that's just a feeling. It doesn't mean it's reality. Those feelings exist in the mind. They are not you. They're not the real you. They exist in the matrix. They're these charged particles that have an electric charge and a weight to them, which is why they feel emotionally charged. They're not real. They're imbalanced emotional charges. And again, in this book, I walk you through how to balance those emotional charges so they don't have that pull, that heaviness feeling to them, that when they do come, they basically just run off of you like water off a duck's back. Next point. So one of the things that this particular client was concerned about, he's like, you know, I've done all the programs. He's like, on a lot of this stuff, I just don't end up following through. And I'm, you know, sabotaging myself by not following through. And I said, well, you're here right now on this call. You reached out to me. He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, you could have just totally ghosted. Why didn't you ghost? Why did you reach out to me? You're here. Is that not following through to some small degree? He's like, yeah, but it's not enough of a degree. I'm like, that right there is what we need to start acknowledging, is the fact that you are following through. In fact, this whole time that you think you haven't been following through on things, most likely, if I had to guess and I could rewind all of those times that you're referring to prior to this, you were also following through. It just wasn't to the elite perfect degree that you had this fantasy in your mind about, but you were following through, just as you are following through right now. And I've watched you have been following through on certain things that I've had him do. For example, our clients use what we call our bulletproof mind system, which, without going into complete detail on that, it's a series of tools where every single client I work with, I do a complete extraction of an inventory of all of the conscious and subconscious mental blocks that they have. And we have a series of 10 tools, one for basically each emotional tone level. And so, for example, if a client lost a bunch of money in some particular deal that went south, I'd have them clear the loss of that dollar amount in that event, and we basically neutralize that event so that that fear of loss doesn't come up for them again, which obviously allows them to get into action faster and more sustainably, because the weight of that is no longer clouding their judgment, keeping them essentially stuck in their existing position. Anyway, one of the things that I have my clients do is 3-4 days a week, my clients clear what we call clear one of these charges, and then they post about it in our boardroom community with their realizations and lessons learned that they thought also might be helpful for the other Bulletproof boardroom members. And since he became a client, since he joined the boardroom, he's been one of the most active members inside the boardroom. And I'm watching him say that he's not following through. And so the reality is, the objective reality, if we're looking at just volume of posts, if we're looking at volume of follow through, he's one of the top, but he has the story that he's not following through. And to use his words, he said, I'm spiraling. And so these are just words, these are just labels that come from the mind. They're not his words, they're not his labels, they come from the mind. And the mind essentially lies to us, which is why we have to get rid of it or neutralize it, which is why one of the main things that we do with our clients is neutralize and essentially bulletproof their mind so that they're free from all of that, so that they can actually execute on the tactics and strategies and whatnot. And that's why our clients on average grow by 78% within their first 90 days, is they're clearing all of the heavy shit that keeps them from making optimal decisions. And so when we're looking at the actual objective data, the fact of the matter is he's one of the most on track people in our Bulletproof boardroom despite his story. So I said, let's default to data, and at the very least, let's attempt to stop telling ourselves the story that we don't follow through, that we're spiraling, that we're having panic attacks. Like, all I'm seeing is a guy who cares a lot, wants to accomplish his goals, and wants to do a good job. The labels that he's putting on that, I'm like, we got to neutralize the charge behind those labels. And we got to move from effect to those thoughts to cause over them. And point number 5, so this particular client, he's worth about $4 million. And for you watching this, I don't know if that's a lot of money to you, if that's a little bit of money to you. I would say in general, having worked with over 1,000 clients in this industry, most people would love to have a $4 million liquid net worth and $150K a month predictable business. But this particular client was not satisfied with that. And so I just reminded him that you are going to take you to every single level that you go to. And it's a game that never ends, which is really great on one hand, but really challenging on another. So at 4 million, you're going to be seeking 40. At 40, you're going to be seeking 400. At 400 million, you're going to be seeking 4 billion. At 4 billion, you're going to be seeking 400 billion, and the game goes on forever. And it's why you have a lot of very seemingly successful multi-millionaire, multi-billionaires that are just miserable, is because they didn't address the one thing that is with them the whole way, and that is themselves, that is their mind. And so my clients and I focus on not just financial freedom and not just time freedom, but we focus on mental freedom. We focus on freeing the mind of all of these inhibitions, all of these emotional charges, so that they can actually enjoy the success that they've had, as little or as much of it as they have had. So even if you're watching this and you're doing 5K, 10K, 50K a month, whatever it is, like at one point where you are right now, that was a dream for you. That was a goal. And now you're there. You gotta take a second to acknowledge that fact. Because if you don't look at where you're making progress and you don't go, I am following through, I am making progress, then you're just gonna feel like you're not. And since everything that we're doing in this physical universe is to experience a sensation, is to experience a feeling, the true thing that we're really after is the feeling. And so if we don't take the time to feel like we're making progress now and acknowledge that and look at the actual empirical evidence that shows that we have made progress, no matter how little progress you feel like you've made in relation to what you think you should have made, you have made progress. And so if you want something, you have to focus on it. And that means just looking at, I did show up today. I did follow through on this. I am on this call. I just reminded my client of this, because there's a paradox with entrepreneurship, and that is the constant pursuit of perfection, meanwhile understanding objectively that perfection is physically impossible. So we're constantly pursuing this elusive beast called perfection, but we have to understand and remind ourselves that perfection is impossible. And when we get too caught up in swinging to the side of I want, it's gotta be, we gotta bring ourselves back and say, you know what? We don't have to do that. We have to detach ourselves from that just enough so that we're able to not lose our fucking minds along the way. And I guess as a bonus point here, kind of tying into the first couple points that we made, having the quote anxiety or having the circumstance or situation that you're dealing with isn't the problem. They're never going to go away. The problem really is the fact that you're viewing it as a thing that shouldn't be there. When the reality is, my client has achieved the success that he's achieved so far, and I reminded him of this, because he has such high standards, because there is that tension of it's not good enough yet and I gotta make it better. Most people don't have that type of standard. And so we have to acknowledge that that's serving us and we don't want to get rid of it. We just want to get rid of the way that we're interpreting it and the way that we're feeling it. And so once we clear these emotional charges that are attached to these perceptions that we have, we can sit here with panic attacks and high standards and all this stuff all day long. And although the reality might not change, the way that we interpret it and the way that it, in so many words, hits us or doesn't hit us, that's where the game changes. And coming from that state, you're able to basically kind of like Neo in the Matrix, watch the bullets kind of go by him in slow motion, versus getting riddled with shots. And so that was actually the inspiration for the name of my company, Bulletproof Entrepreneur, is in that end scene of the Matrix where Neo gets shot, he dies, everybody thinks it's over, he comes back to life. Everybody goes, holy shit, he's the one. The agents shoot at him. He puts his hand out, says no, stops the bullets, fucks up the agents, and he's doing it from a place of cool, calm, collected. Notice the fight was still there, but he's just handling it like a complete, calm, zen dude. As my client Brandon Carter says, he feels like James Bond on vacation. Just handle it. But problems are happening, but I got it. So it's not that we're trying to eliminate problems altogether. That's physically impossible. By definition, the physical universe is a problem. A problem requires a goal and an obstacle in the way of where we are to the goal. And so the physical universe is this push and pull. It's kind of like an offense and defense. So the physical universe is kind of like this offense and a defense, and that is the positive and negative charges that do hold these atoms that make up physical matter together. So by definition, the physical universe is a problem. And so instead of being effect to that, we want to channel our inner vanilla ice. And we want to say, if there's a problem, yo, I'll solve it. Check out the hook while my DJ revolves it. That seems like a great note to end on. If you want a copy of the book, grab it in the description. DM me the word bulletproof on Instagram if you want to learn more about what we do, or just watch the video that YouTube has lined up for you right here, and I will see you in the next one.